All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third parent education webinar of this school year. My name is Heather McDonald, and I'm the co-chair of the PAC at Margaret Jenkins. And tonight we're pleased to welcome author and registered dietitian Kristen Yarker, who will provide us with some tips on how to make healthy and delicious packed school lunches for our kids, as well as healthy snacks too. Before we introduce Kristen, just a couple of housekeeping details. Obviously, everybody's on mute except for us for the webinar. So to ask Kristen questions, which we will probably save for the question and answer session at the end of Kristen's talk, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll keep track of the questions and do our best to relay all of them to Kristen at the end. She will have a couple of questions right off the bat that will involve some background noise there, sorry. Just to use the Q&A, the chat function just at the start to enter responses just to her quick opening questions. We are recording the presentation, and Kristen has kindly agreed to allow us to distribute the recording following the meeting. So we'll make it available on our website and Facebook page, and we'll also email those links to those who registered for the webinar, but including those who might not have been able to attend. So in terms of an agenda, Kristen's going to present for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions and hopefully wrap things up around 8:30. So I'm just going to turn it over to Tarek Amlani, one of our members at large on our PAC executive, who's done a great job of organizing this event and connecting with Kristen to make this happen tonight.
Wonderful. Yeah, pleasure to introduce Kristen. So author and dietitian, Kristen Yarker is a leading child feeding expert in Canada. She has 25 years of experience helping parents support their kids to be their best eaters without resorting to the forceful ways of the past. In addition to working with families, Kristen is the go-to consultant for the BC Ministry of Health, health authorities, health nonprofit organization, and parenting professionals. And yes, Kristen does practice what she teaches with 3 boys who spend part-time in her home, aged 10, 9, and 7. With that, Kristen, I'll hand it over to you, and please take us.
Great. Well, thank you so much, PAC members from Margaret Jenkins School, for organizing this event and for inviting me to share my information. And thank you to all the PACs at the various other schools who have contributed to sharing the information as well. Really appreciate that. So I am just going to move this out of the way so that we can get rolling. Okay, so as Heather shared, I'm going to just ask a couple of questions right off the top so that I can find out a little bit more about who has joined us tonight. And so, yeah, so who here wants to raise a healthy eater? Give a little like me or hands up in the chat there. Yeah, forgot lots of hands raised. Awesome. Oh, good. Yeah, lots of folks coming across the screen there. Fantastic. Good. And I want to find out a little bit more about what are the ages of the kiddos whose lunches you're packing. What ages are we representing here tonight? If you can just type in your child or children's ages whose lunches we're talking about tonight. Go ahead, enter that in the chat. Oh, good. Things are showing up. Great. Heather, can you share what people are adding in the chat there?
Yeah, so if you, in the chat thing, if you can choose to share to the panelists and attendees, then everybody can see what you've entered there. So we've got, everything from 5 to 12. I'm seeing the oldest so far. 14-year-old. Yeah, 3, between 3 and 14.
Okay, so a good wide range. Fantastic. That's what I was expecting, and so it's great to have that confirmed today. Awesome. Great. And so considering that we have a wide range of ages present, of course, what meets the nutrition need of a 3-year-old is exactly the same as meeting the nutrition need of a 14-year-old, but similar balance and patterns will be happening, but obviously the amount of food, to support a 14-year-old size body is very different than to support a 3-year-old size body. So I purposely haven't given specific serving sizes and things like that today because I was anticipating a wide range of ages, parents and guardians of a wide range of ages today. So fantastic that that's exactly who has shown up. So wonderful. Okay, good. We've got the hands up. Good. So just to walk us through what we'll be covering in the next hour and a half, we're almost winding up our introductions here. And then we'll be talking about the 2 goals when feeding kids, moving into children's nutrition needs, how to meet those. And then we're just going to touch very briefly on SADR's division of responsibility, because really it is an important foundational piece for the information that I'm sharing today. And then we'll get into the nitty gritty, the what the heck to pack in those school lunches, and also tips for how to get lunches eaten. And then, as Heather indicated, we're going to give lots and lots of time for Q&A at the end there. So please feel free to enter your questions as they're arising for you during the session. Heather has kindly offered to help moderate that and keep track of them either in the Q&A box or in the chat box as they're coming up, and we'll have lots of time for Q&A at the end. Right, so just to, Tarek introduced me and I appreciate him doing that. If you're wanting to know how to get a hold of me, through my website is the easiest and quickest way to get a hold of me. I also have my phone number, email address, and then social media handles present there. And I do share monthly email newsletters with some recipe ideas and nutrition tips. And so if that is something that you would like to receive, please just drop me a quick email at that email address, kristen@kristenyarker.com, after today or after we finish up today, or maybe you're a good multitasker and you're doing it right now, that would be fantastic. And I will add you to the community who receives email newsletters from me just once a month. So I am not like some of those places that are sending them, filling up the inbox. Oh my goodness. Okay. So moving into our content here. So when we're talking feeding kids, really we're working on 2 goals simultaneously. The first is that we're looking to meet their nutrition needs, of course, and that's what people, that's the immediate thing, the thing that often, us as parents have on our minds. We want to make sure they're getting enough food in them to meet their needs for growth and development. But also at the same time, we're looking to help them establish a healthy relationship with food so that they choose to become lifelong healthy eaters, right? After their lunch from us, that they choose healthy eating. And so really we're always working on that immediate, that current need, as well as having that longer perspective. And I find that sometimes it can be so easy to get kind of focused in on meeting the current needs that sometimes it's at the expense of that longer term healthy eating relationship. And so I just like to bring that forward just to even frame the conversation we're going to have tonight, the information that I'll be sharing with you today, that really we're always working on those 2 pieces. So that leads me then to what does meet kids' current nutrition needs. So first is vegetables and fruit. I mean, probably not surprising that that's the first place I'm going to go. And yes, vegetables and fruit, what we're aiming for is for half of what kids are eating to be vegetables and or fruit. And we do put vegetables and fruit together, and thankfully so, because a lot of kiddos have more struggles with enjoying vegetables. A lot of kids do find fruit more enjoyable, more palatable for them. And to tell the truth, for kids, that's fantastic. I don't get too worried about, are they having fruits versus veggies? We're just looking for those fruits and veggies to be happening as an overall category. And some of that is because fruit has that naturally sweeter flavor profile. And we're actually born with an innate enjoyment of sweet flavors. And our enjoyment of other flavors happens, and we learn to like flavors through repeated exposure. We learn to like all those other foods, including more bitter flavor profiles. And in fact, there's some evidence that shows that physiological differences in kids' taste buds, particularly kids in the younger age, like that 3, 4, 5-year-old range, they have physiological differences in their taste buds. That means that they experience bitter flavors more strongly than we with adult taste buds do. And a lot of vegetables naturally have a more bitter flavor profile. So that is one of the reasons why many kiddos do struggle more with enjoying vegetables. And so, hey, it's great that fruit has a lot of the same nutrients in there as the vegetables do with that naturally sweeter flavor profile. So it's great. And that's also why many of the vegetables that kids do like tend to be the sweeter tasting vegetables, the vegetables with less bitter flavor profile. So things like our carrots and cucumbers and colored bell peppers and things like that do tend to have that sweeter flavor profile. And so many kids do naturally lean more in that way. Now, I am talking kind of in generalizations. Of course, there are some kids who are avid vegetable eaters and they're all over those. And there are some kids who really can't stand fruit. Of course, I'm not, denying individual experiences. I'm talking more, in a group setting, kind of across kids as a generality. Okay. And what I'll be sharing with you here, now this is what we're looking for as a balance for kids kind of overall. So not just at any one particular meal or particular snack. We're looking for this as kind of their throughout the day balance, or throughout the week balance, throughout the month balance. When it comes to nutrition, what you eat in one particular meal is not as big a deal as what your kind of daily habits are, your weekly habits are, your monthly habits are. Nutrition is more of a cumulative process versus, one poor meal. So looking into that, as I said, about half of what kids are eating being vegetables and fruit overall. And then protein-rich foods. We want protein-rich foods happening for kids about 3 or more times a day, eating some protein-rich foods. And protein-rich foods are things like our beans and lentils and chickpeas type of category, pulses, if you will, the technical name. Nuts and seeds and their butters are rich in protein. Soy foods, so things like tofu and tempeh are great protein-rich foods. Eggs, as well as the different animal-based proteins, so things like meat and poultry, seafood are all protein-rich, as well as cheese and yogurt also have good protein contributions. Now, most of those foods are also not only protein-rich, but they're iron-rich foods too, which is important for kiddos. Iron is not only important for overall growth and development, but particularly for brain development, and particularly in those younger kids in this range that we're talking about, so kind of the 3, 4, 5s and into the earlier school age years. So their brains are particularly developing at a time and requiring iron at that time. And so it's great that a lot of these protein foods are also rich in iron, so kind of double goodness happening there. Exceptions are the dairy foods, so the cheese and the yogurt have the protein, but they don't have the iron in there. But all the other ones have at least some, if not fantastic, sources of iron as well as the protein. And then, of course, our starch foods, right, which many kids have a natural love of, and hey, I mean, most of us adults do. We love our starch foods, and you can use, the word starch or carbs or carbohydrates or grains are used interchangeably in our common language. they have technical differences, but I'll use the three terms interchangeably because, hey, that's how we talk about them. And so those are things like our breads, our noodles, our cereals, our different grains like rice and quinoa, etc. All of those breads. Did I mention breads? Yeah, in any shape you bake it in. All of those are our starch foods, and we're looking for 3 or more servings of those in the day. And then fat. Fat we want to be having for kids. Kids aren't great on a low-fat diet. We need that fat for them because they are so busy. They need the calorie density, but also for their brains and other development, helping absorb fat-rich, fat-soluble vitamins. And so we want fat as a part of their diet. And fats can be either a component within a food naturally, so things like the nuts and seeds in their butters have the healthy fats in there, avocado, the fatty fish, so things like salmon and our little guys, so like sardines, anchovies, etc., as well as fats that may be added as part of cooking or preparing foods. So the olive oil that might be in a hummus, or some oil that you might put in the pan, when you're roasting vegetables, that type of thing. So whether fat is a part of a component of food already or whether we're adding it, we need the fat. The kiddos need the fat, and so I recommend using it as part of cooking and that too. And then hydration. Kids, of course, need to be well hydrated like the rest of us. And hydration really, often we think of water, but it's not just water that hydrates. Other beverages hydrate as well. So things like a dairy milk or a plant-based milk alternative, like an almond milk or an oat milk, are mostly made up of water. They're very hydrating. If you choose to do juices for kids, things like smoothies, the liquid you put in there or in a soup, all of these things are hydrating, as well as vegetables and fruit can contribute hydration too. And so we want that hydration through the day. And most kids are pretty darn good if we're just offering hydration throughout the day at drinking to their thirst and doing a good job there, as long as it's being offered. And then when it comes to vitamins and supplements, I don't give vitamin or supplement recommendations en masse. I individualize my recommendations based on a child's nutrition needs, their health concerns, their eating habits, and any medications that they may be taking. And so I don't have overarching, like every child needs X vitamin or every child needs Y supplement. When pressed, I would say that the 2 most common ones that I do recommend for kids that might be a vitamin D, probably not surprising. Many people are aware of vitamin D and how it's in very few food sources, as well as omega-3. And so if you're a family who eats fish quite regularly, multiple times a week, then you've got it covered through the fish and no supplement needed. But if that is not yourself, either you choose to be a plant-based family, a vegan, vegetarian family, or your kiddo just doesn't like fish, or you guys as a family don't care for fish, then there are both fish oil or algae-based, plant-based omega-3 supplements as well. So those would be the most common ones that I am recommending for kids, but again, don't take this workshop as a recommendation that my child definitely needs it. As I said, I provide supplement recommendations on an individualized basis. Yeah, just rotating my little notes that I have on the side here. It's such a passionate topic that I can easily get sidetracked. So I gotta keep notes for myself so that I stay on track and respect our time we have together here. Okay. Great, moving us along. That is not participating. Okay. Right, so quick overview of nutrition needs for kids. And, it might be saying, okay, that's lovely. That's lovely that those are what is recommended for my child. But yeah, how do I get them to eat that? What if your child is nowhere near having that balance? How do we get there? And that's where the SADR's division of responsibility starts to come in. So the division of responsibility, we're going to do kind of a light touching on it here. It's a topic of a whole webinar series, really. But it is, and again, not a super catchy name, but it is one that is very descriptive in its title. And so it's getting at the idea that in feeding children, there is a division of that responsibility. And that responsibility is divided between the adults and the kids. And so the adult's role is to plan, to prepare, and to provide the food. Now, of course, we can ask the kids to get involved in doing some of the preparing, right? We can ask the kids to help pack a lunch. We can, ask the kids, do you want oatmeal or cereal for breakfast, let's say. We can give them some choices, but it's not their sole responsibility to prepare everything and to, do the grocery shopping and have it in the house and those sorts of things. And then after it's been provided, then our role as the adults ends. And it's a child's role to decide whether or not to eat at this opportunity. It's a child's role to decide how much to eat from what's been provided, which might mean that they're not going to eat anything. And what to eat from what's been provided. And that includes eating things in whatever order they want to eat them in. And so a lot of the battles that can happen and the power struggles that can happen around food often stems from, in the 12 years that I've been working specifically with, longer than that. Yeah, 12 years I've been working specifically with families and seen thousands of families with kiddos who are struggling with picky eaters. I find that the number one contributor to what's going on is that this division of responsibility has gotten a little one side or the other. And so and it's always comes from the best of intentions with parents, but it can get a little skewed. So it can be from things like asking a child, what do you want to eat? So asking them to plan the entire meal, and it might be breakfast time or, packed lunch time to pack lunches. And it's like, okay, what do you want to pack for your lunch? And, they might say like chocolate ice cream. I mean, you asked, right? And particularly the younger kids, right? And so then it's like, then you have to go down this road of, well, you can't choose chocolate ice cream. You have to make a different choice. And then it can just, go down not the greatest path. The other way is so that's a way of asking the child to take on the adult role, take on the planning. The other way that things often go is that adults overtake the child's role. So whenever you say things like, you need to eat 2 more bites, that's the adult choosing how much to eat. Or in a packed lunch example, it can be, dictating what food the child must choose for their recess and what food the child must eat for lunch. Or asking children to eat lunch in a certain order. You can't have the homemade muffin until you've eaten your carrot sticks or whatever it is. It tends to not work because from the psychology of it, the child development of it, what we understand is that those types of requests, what they do is reinforce that the carrot stick, in my example, is some awful chore, that you get rewarded the extra shiny prize of the muffin by eating. And what we're wanting to do again in that long-term goal is raise kids who choose to eat carrot sticks or carrots or vegetables. And yet what we're doing is reinforcing that there's some awful thing. So it can get the carrot stick in the moment, but it's, again, we're winning the war, that battle, but we're losing the war of getting kids to choose to become healthy eaters. We're losing that long-term perspective. It's at that cost. And so what really matters is giving children the opportunity to have that choice within the structure of the adults planning and preparing and providing food. And again, what matters most is that kids get the healthy foods, the balance throughout the day. And so oftentimes we get so kind of short-sighted and think of at this meal, at this packed lunch, the child needs to eat these things. When really it doesn't have to be then. It just, we don't want kids to have balance throughout the day. So what to pack for lunch always fits within a context of a child's day or a child's week. And the reality is that a lot of schools just aren't set up in the ideal way for kids to do the best job at lunchtime. And that's not what we're, here to work on or discuss changing today, right? Now we're talking about what we can do within the current situation. And so what we can do is kind of stack the odds so that kids do the best job of eating. It's very common for kiddos to maybe not eat much at lunch because it's difficult in the kind of classroom setting for them to do a good job of eating at lunch. And so, hey, you know what? Why not have the rest of lunch as your after school snack? If it was a healthy choice for packed lunch, then it's a healthy choice for after school snack. Then, hey, you put that work into packing it, let's eat it. And so I'm a big fan of having a very robust snack after school, because it can be a time to do a little bit of catching up if kiddos aren't doing a great job of doing well eating at school. And particularly a number of the kids whom I see, they struggle with that if they're easily distracted, if they have any sensory kind of issues where, kids eating other foods or the smell of other things or sights of other foods really distracts or is quite unpleasant for kiddos. Often those kids have quite a tough time doing a good job of eating at lunchtime at school. And it doesn't mean they're always going to do poorly. They will learn that skill set, but it's going to take some time for them. And often it takes, the first kind of term or the first year of school to be able to gain that skill set. And so allowing them to, have a very robust after school snack is a great idea, because then they can do a good job then when they're able to focus and they don't have those other distractions. In a similar vein there, something that I often see parents get quite caught up in is the idea of meals being when the healthy foods need to go in and the larger amounts of foods, and snacks being, something smaller that might not be as a healthy a choice. And the reality is that a lot of kids don't have natural appetite patterns that match that. And so particularly the younger kiddos, the kind of 3, 4, 5, even 6-year-olds, often, meal times is not when they're hungriest in the day. And so really what I look at is creating equal opportunities to eat. So instead of like big meals with healthy foods and small snacks with smaller food, what I recommend is treating all of the meals and snacks as equal opportunities to eat. Because it doesn't matter if they're getting the most healthy foods in at a snack time. What we want are those healthy foods going in. And it's a very common for kiddos to naturally be quite hungry, to have a big appetite, and that afternoon time, that after school snack time. And so taking advantage of that time. And so when we're looking at what we're packing for school lunch, really, if they might end up eating a smaller amount and having more of what we might perceive as a snack at that lunch, and then a bigger amount, when they get to get home from school, or get to an after school care situation where it's kind of less distracting, and maybe they've been, there for a number of years, and so they know the routine, and it's a very grounded experience for them. They can do a better job of eating then. And so, yeah, some of the kind of anxiety from us as adults around kids at lunch is because we kind of set up that expectation in that way. And so by changing the priorities, changing the expectations, then kids can often do a lot better at meeting their nutrition needs by taking advantage of the snack time. Okay. And I've got the website there for the Ellen Satter Institute. That's Ellen Satter is who developed the Division of Responsibility, and the Institute has led a lot of research around this concept. And so we're again talking just quite briefly about the Division of Responsibility, particularly around packed lunches today, but I highly encourage you to check out the additional resources that they have at their website. They're very fulsome website, and a lot of fantastic resources there. And from there, you can connect to their social media channels, etc. Okay, we're going to move us along. So we're going to get into what to pack now. So what the heck are we going to pack in those lunches? And so for this assumption, for what to pack, I am assuming that what we're packing is for lunch and perhaps a morning recess as well. I'm assuming that kids are having breakfast, after school snack, dinner, and perhaps a bedtime snack outside of what we're talking about here in this packed lunch. And as I mentioned right off the top, I've, some of the examples visually in that I have, they're not representing the full range from 3 years all the way to 14 years. But children's appetites are a really great determinant for how much food to pack. And so starting off with an amount, and if a large amount is coming home every day, then, packing a little less is a great idea. If they're eating everything and saying that they're hungry and they didn't have enough, then that's a good way to know that you need to be packing more for lunch. Often it's difficult for us adults to trust kids' appetites. And kids' appetites can also be highly variable. It's very normal for kids to be completely inconsistent with how much they'll eat. And so you might have kids who eat very little for a short period of time and then eat a ton for a short period of time and then eat very little. That is very, very normal. I know it from the kiddos in I know it academically and from working with so many families, but then I also see it in my own home with the kiddos who share home with me. And yeah, you can always tell, like some days, they're barely picking at their food, and you can serve the same thing, 2 weeks later, and they're getting like 2 huge portions. And you're like, kid, you're eating twice as much as me. Where's it all going? And always for these kids, it's like, oh, and then in like a few days time, growth spurt. It's like, there it is. And so having that knowledge that it's totally normal for kids to be very inconsistent with the amount of food that they eat, which can be hard for us to trust. However, babies are born knowing when they're hungry and when they're satisfied. And it's really only through our socialization that we learn not to trust those cues, and we learn not to trust our body and to eat out of sync with that. And so as adults, we may have lost that, but it's really important to help kids maintain that and not teach them to not listen to their bodies. And what we see research kind of looking longer term with kids is that kids who are allowed to eat, sometimes lots, sometimes little, as directed by their own appetites. When we compare those with kids who are raised where the adults choose how much to eat, so either households where they're told, okay, you got to eat 2 more bites, you got to eat 1 more bite, that sort of style where they're encouraged to eat more, or families where they are told you can't have any more, that's too much, that you can't possibly still be hungry. In households where the parents choose how much or how little kids are eating, those kids, when we look longer term, they tend to have higher rates of eating disorders and higher rates of obesity, where the kiddos raised in the households where they're allowed to be totally erratic, sometimes eating tons, sometimes eating little. When we step back and we look at following their growth charts, they seem to do a better job with that, and they have more steady growth. And so it's unnerving to not be in control of how much, but that's why the division of responsibility is about kids choose how much to eat. It's our job to provide the opportunity to eat and to take their leads with how much. So that's a whole long explanation, but why I haven't specified, specific amounts here. Not only do we have the age spread, but also that it's not our role to determine how much. But what we want to be packing for them, kind of balance-wise or pattern-wise. Of course, as I said, vegetables and fruit, starting with the vegetables and fruit. We want a good 2 servings of vegetables and fruit or more. I'm kind of talking about some minimal amounts here. So packed in the lunch, we want veggies or fruit, 2 good servings. Protein-rich foods, we want 1 or 2 servings of those to happen in a packed lunch. For the starch foods, we're looking for 1 or 2 servings of starch foods in a packed lunch. And then treats being optional and wonderful options to add. And so looking at this little example that I have on the screen here, we have a little bento box style packed lunch. And for this little one, we've got a little tofu pizza for them, as well as some rice crackers, some yogurt with some canned mandarin orange slices in there, some cucumber slices, and some raspberries and grapes. And so here we have, obviously, the veggies and fruit are easy to spot. They've got some green peppers and a little tomato sauce on that pizza. We've got the raspberries, the grapes, the cucumbers, and the little mandarin orange slices there. For protein-rich foods, we have both the yogurt as well as the tofu and the cheese happening. And then the starch foods, of course, are the rice crackers and the pizza crust. So we got all those. We got our 2, well, we got, 4 opportunities for some veggies and fruit happening there. We've got 2 proteins, 2 starches, and no treats in this one as an example. So there's one example of what things may look like. And I'm a big fan of leftovers. One of the reasons why I have this on here is that's some leftover pizza from last night. Maybe they had pizza or make your own pizzas last night and they made some extras so that they could pack them for lunch today. I'm a big fan of doing leftovers at lunchtime. And thinking about snacks outside of the snack kind of label or snack box. So for snacks, this kiddo might choose to have some of the pizza or all of the pizza at snack. They might choose to have the grapes. They might choose to have cucumber. They might choose to grab those crackers and take them. Really doesn't matter what they choose for a snack, but there are lots of options that they can be choosing for like a morning recess out of this packed lunch. In the next one, we have another example. And so here we have bean salad in the top left, the top corner there. We have some crackers, some kind of whole grain seed crackers there. Some of you might recognize those. We have cucumber slices and carrot sticks there. We have a little container of some seeds. So some sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. So it would be for a school where need to be nut-free, but seeds are possible. And then it's a little tricky to see under the white circle, but there are some mixed fruits there, some blueberries and melon pieces cut out with a little cookie cutter there. And so here's another example of how to pack with that formula. We've got the little half cherry tomatoes. We've got the fruits down in the corner that are a bit tougher to see, and we've got the cucumber and the carrot sticks as our veggies and fruit options. We've got protein being the beans there and the seeds. Starch foods being the crackers there. And well, to tell the truth, beans and lentils, you can count them either protein food or a starch food. Really, they fit in both food categories. So a little double duty happening there. And again, no treat happens to be in this example. And so again, kiddos for snack, a morning recess or a snack might choose to grab the crackers. They might choose to grab a handful of the fruit or the veggie sticks, or they might choose to take that little container of seeds and have those there. Here's another example. I'm going to take a little sip while you absorb the photo there. Okay, and so this one is a little banana roll up with, it could be a nut butter or a no nut butter in a whole wheat tortilla. So you just kind of lay the tortilla flat, spread it with the nut butter or no nut butter, laid the banana in, rolled it up, cut it in some pieces. We've got some edamame in the top center there, which is the soybeans. We've got some cucumber and some cantaloupe that have been cut with a little heart cookie cutter. And so again, kind of rolling through, this is a great example. We've got, for fruits and vegetables, we've got cucumber, we've got melon, we've got a banana. For protein-rich foods, we've got the edamame, which is the soybean, and we have the nut butter or the no nut butter. For starch foods, we have the tortilla, and a full-size tortilla is kind of like 2 servings of starch for most folks. And yeah, no treat in this one. And then a fourth example here. And so with this one, we've got a little quesadilla, and in there is like a mashed chickpea mix. There with some guacamole on the side, and then some pineapple, some celery sticks, and then again, tough to see under the white circle, but that's the black bean brownie under there. And so again, with our little checklist, 2 servings of veggies or fruits, yep, check, check, check. We've got 3, we've got pineapple, we've got celery, we've got guacamole. Protein, we have the chickpeas inside that quesadilla, as well as the black beans hiding in that brownie. For starch, we have again the tortilla in the quesadilla, as well as some starch in that brownie. And then the brownie, of course, is an optional treat in this example. So again, this kiddo for recess might choose some celery sticks. They might choose the quesadilla. They might choose the brownie. My bet's on the brownie, but you never know. And then, I would serve a little spoon with this one, so that, hey, even if they eat the quesadilla not with the guacamole, but they eat the guacamole separate, maybe. So those are a few examples of that what to pack kind of made in real life. And so what I find, kind of looking back through just some examples that I have shared here, what I find is really, really helpful for helping be able to do this pattern is to actually write out a list of foods that your kiddo enjoys. And I would do this for each kid that you have. And I would organize the list by those food groups. So have, a veggie and fruit section, a protein section, and a starch section. and write out different things that your child, what I call familiar foods, so things that they pretty much always eat. Like you could, you know, if you were a betting person, you could bet on the fact that they'll eat that food. Or things that I call hit and miss foods. So, you know, things sometimes they eat, they don't, sometimes they don't eat, it's hit or miss. Write those out, organized by food group. And different presentations of those foods would be separate entries on that food group. So for example, we might have pizza here, and then, you know, the 2 rice crackers as a separate listing, then the other feed, you know, whole grain crackers here, and then tortilla in a banana roll up is one idea, and then tortilla as a quesadilla would be 2, even though it's the same tortilla, it would be 2 separate entries there. And I find that it can really be helpful to, like, literally, you know, whether you write it on a piece of paper, whether you create a little spreadsheet, you know, on your computer, however you process information, but to have that in front of you so that you can then mix and match and combine things to create lunches. I find that it's a lot easier when you've got them listed in front of you to do, rather than like trying to brainstorm, you know, late at night, you're exhausted, you're thinking about, oh heck, what, I got to pack lunches for tomorrow, what the heck am I going to pack? And that's how we get really into the same kind of rut. And so I find taking that moment to create those lists and creating one, you know, for each kiddo, as I said, really can help do mix and matching, right? So that you're like, oh yeah, they like pineapple. I forgot. Yeah, we could do pineapple on there. And ooh, then, you know, you're doing maybe your online grocery store order, or you're at the store and you're like, ooh, pineapples are on sale. Awesome. I'll get some of that. We can put that, you know, in the lunch. That list really is helpful. It's also helpful for helping create that rotation and that balance within the day, as I mentioned. You know, because as we said, that it's not so important that they get a complete balance within one meal. So this kiddo, for example, maybe at the end of the school day, you open up the lunchbox and they've eaten the brownie and the quesadilla, and that's it, right? So then you know, okay, they've had protein and carbs today, but not so many fruits and veggies. So maybe tomorrow when you're packing lunch for them, maybe you don't do both of those in the same one, or maybe you have those, but you change up the fruits or veggies, see if they're more attractive for them. And so you're kind of helping get a rotation through the day, or maybe for dinner or for bedtime snack, then, you know, they haven't had any, you know, they've had carbs and protein and that's it so far, you know, like lunch and morning snacks. So when for dinner or perhaps after school snack or bedtime snack, you serve a veggie or a fruit that is more of a favorite food of theirs, so that they're getting fruit or veggie in the day, because these ones that you packed didn't get eaten. Oh well. Yeah, I find that it seems like a little bit of time to make that list, but it really can be time well invested. Okay. Great. So moving on to tips to help get lunches eaten. As you can see, I'm a fan of the bento style lunch boxes. Many kids do like to have food kind of separated and in their own little place. And so let's play into that with the bento style boxes. There are many different brands out there, many different styles and shapes and that. I'm not purporting any one specific one. I don't work for any of the companies making it, but I am a fan of them because it does lay things out quite nicely for kids. And that leans into it for a couple of reasons. One is that one of the tips, one of the ways to make sure kids, well, not to make sure, but to stack the odds so that kids are eating their lunch, is to create things in a way that are visually appealing. And that doesn't mean you have to be like the next Instagram or Pinterest star for, you know, cute little foods and that. But even, you know, the examples I've shown here, a lot of them aren't super fussy, but they still are visually appealing. And, you know, all of us eat with our eyes, but particularly those younger kids, like the 3, the 4, the 5-year-olds, they're in a developmental stage where they're particularly visually oriented. And so they can be particularly, you know, persuaded to eat foods when they look attractive. And so that's all of these have a fair amount of attractiveness to them. And yet, you know, we're not going like next level food styling here, right? There's just chopped celery, there's a pineapple, you know, it's a square of a brownie, it's a couple of scoops of avocado, and oh, you cut the quesadilla into a few pieces, right? But it still looks attractive and appealing. Same with this one. You know, I cut the banana ones, kind of standing them upright like that. They look kind of nice and neat, all standing, you know, together there. And then the hearts were a simple cookie cutter that I used to cut out the hearts. I am not a food stylist. I don't even do my own food styling, you know, for my website and that's my, you know, business. But, and so, yeah, these are all techniques that I can master. If I can master it, you can master it. But yeah, if you have a cookie cutter, if it can cut a cookie, specifically if it's the metal ones, it can cut fruit. And hey, particularly the younger kids, you know, the 14-year-old might be over this, but the younger kids often will be very attracted to having veggies and fruit in these cute little shapes. And so, yeah, why not, you know, do some cookie cutters this way. I think I got this pack of like stacked sizes of hearts, you know, after Valentine's Day at a discount store for very little money. And I've used them so much with workshops with kids back, obviously pre-COVID, when we would do workshops with kids and food. But they're huge hits with the kiddos. And so, you know, it takes us as much time to kind of cut out things with the heart shape as without. In this one, this is one of the students working with me. You know, she's got the little lemon on there. That's a little food styling. Okay. But underneath the white circle there, there's a star and a heart cookie cutter. That looks nice. And again, just kind of taking the moment to line up the cucumbers and the carrots like that. Sure, it's a little bit of food styling, but it also does make it look very appealing. So there's something about the bento boxes, but also, you know, taking a moment with the kiddos. Again, this one here, you know, it's just a pizza cut into a few pieces. You cut up the cucumber. We didn't even get the cookie cutters going here, but it still looks attractive. You know, everything kind of mixed together here, like in their little cubbies, but it's quite visually appealing just with simple food. So taking that moment to make things look a little bit visually appealing can go a long way with kids. I mean, all of us, we eat with our eyes, but particularly those younger little ones. Another one is to cut things in smaller pieces. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but again, with distracted kiddos, with short attention spans, with short amounts of time to eat in school or at recess, we want things that are really easy for the kiddos to eat. So, you know, we've got the cucumbers in slices, we've cut the pizza in pieces. You could even cut it in smaller pieces, particularly if you had a younger kid. You know, maybe you would cut these triangles into, you know, 2 or even 3 pieces each, because that way they seem kind of quicker and easier to eat, and also they it's less intimidating for a kid to eat more small pieces of something versus a big piece of something. It can be a little overwhelming. Same with here, you can see that we've got things quite small. The carrot sticks and celery and cucumber sticks are quite small here. I love, you know, the rice crackers are these other ones, little small crackers, small size crackers are great. Again, kind of choosing more of the berries, the easy things to eat, quite small there. Even cut I mean, cherry tomatoes are pretty small on their own. That was more of a food styling thing to cut the tomato in half, but hey, why not? And if you do have, you know, younger kids, that you're packing lunches for, then hey, that could be good to minimize choking hazards as well. Here again, we've cut that banana roll up into small pieces. Again, I could have just cut it maybe in half and it would have fit diagonally across that bento box, but having it in the smaller pieces, more likely that they'll eat more small pieces. It's just the way it goes. Again, and the cucumber, the cantaloupe cut in small pieces, more likely that they'll eat them. Same here, right? Even the guacamole, instead of doing a big scoop in the main container there, we did the small containers and did 2. And so they might eat 1 then, or it just, and again, the things are cut into small pieces. It really is a step that can facilitate the kiddos doing a better job of eating. Another thing is to make sure that containers are easy for kids to open. Again, sounds quite simple, but particularly those younger kids, if they have to put some effort into opening something, they're not going to do it and things will go uneaten. And so having containers that are super easy for them to open. And I recommend doing some practice at home. If you have a new container, before you send it to school with them, serve a snack at home, serve a bedtime snack, serve breakfast in it. Let's see how they can do on their own without help opening something. Because if they have to rely on help or they have to struggle to open it, they're not going to eat it. I mean, some kids will persevere and eat it, but a lot of kids will just not bother. And so really making sure that things are super easy for your kids to open or unpackage. And then another one here. Okay, let's see. Great. Another tip is to have kids get involved in packing the lunch. It seems like it can be more work to have to get the effort where you can be much more efficient if you just pack them. However, it can be worthwhile asking them to participate, because when kids have vested interest in making it, they then are more likely to eat it. It's their lunch then. It's not, oh, what the heck did grandma pack for me? It's, oh, I packed this lunch for me. This is my lunch. And so with that ownership level increase, they're more likely to eat it. And of course, what we ask kids who are 3 to participate in doing a packed lunch is much different than 14. By 14, absolutely, they can be packing their lunch by then. They can be packing their own lunch by 10 for a lot of kiddos. Some kiddos at 8 can be packing their own lunch. It really, there's child-to-child variability, but involving them is a great way to get them, A, more likely to eat their lunch, but also B, to start learning those food skills, right? How does one cut things? How does one make choices to go in a lunch? This is a great time to be contributing to their skill development for when they eventually launch. And so, it might be for the 3-year-old, it might be more of they're not doing so much packing, but they, you might say, okay, do you want blueberries or raspberries? Right? And they can pick, and then they can maybe help put it in. They're not the ones necessarily washing it and packing, and they're certainly not like cutting a quesadilla and those things. But again, you might be asking them, do you want carrots or cucumber or both? And so then they can choose which one, and that's what goes through. Now again, particularly with younger kids, there isn't a guarantee that what they say they'll eat for lunch, they'll actually eat for lunch. As kids get older, there's going to be a stronger and stronger correlation between what they said they want to eat for lunch and what they will eat. But yeah, at those younger ages, it's great to get them involved. Does it increase the chance they'll eat it? Yes. Is it a guarantee? No. Because again, for those little ones, it's such a long time between what they say they'll eat in the morning to when lunch actually comes. That is a whole lifetime in their mind. So we can't expect them to necessarily do a good job there and really know, predict what they're going to want. It's just such a next time. And then another way to help get kids as kind of a upping the ante kind of next level way to help kids eat eat their lunches is to aim to not have exactly the same thing for lunch every day. I know it can be easy to get stuck in ruts ourselves. It can be just kind of streamlining it, but a lot of kids will get very rigid. And if they've gotten very rigid, this is what I eat for lunch, period, then it can be harder to move them out of that. So it's good to try to not get stuck in that yourself. Don't lead the way into that rigidity. But even if you've kind of stumbled into there a little bit, there's a way we can get out, and that's to start rotating foods even within their foods that they like. Even if there's like two, maybe it's that we're rotating between cucumber slices, carrot slices, or both. And so those are kind of happening. Some days it's carrot sticks, some days it's cucumber sticks, sometimes it's both carrots and cucumber. And that is just, even that little bit amount of changing it up can help kiddos break out of the full-on fixed rigidity. I only eat carrot sticks at lunch, period. It's like, they like cucumber too, but nope, carrot sticks are what they eat. They're stuck there. And so doing some rotation amongst the foods that they do accept can be quite helpful. Okay, so those are my tips for what to eat before we launch into the Q&A. And Heather, I'll ask you to kind of get warmed up, take a sip of water, because we're going to launch into Q&A. I want to remind people how they can get a hold of me. So I do, as I said, share recipe ideas, tips by email once a month in an email newsletter. I'd love to have you join that community who receives those. And so please just email me, Kristen@KristenYarker.com, to receive those. And here's how to get a hold of me again. So my website is KristenYarker.com. Here's my other contact info. Okay, so we have a nice fulsome half hour for some Q&A. So Heather, I'm going to open up the little talking head section here and start showing us.
Thanks so much, Kristen. That was fantastic, and lots of very helpful tips that I know I will be able to use, particularly that last one about for the child who eats carrot sticks every day for lunch. I have one of those in my house. Great suggestions there. Thank you. We've had a few questions come through the Q&A. So first, back to the sort of the food group one right at the start. Is quinoa a seed? Does that make it not fall into the grain category?
Yeah, so I count quinoa in the starches, grains, carbohydrate category. It is, you're right, a pseudo grain. It is technically a seed. And so it does have more protein than many other starches, but it still is predominantly a starch food. So I do put it in there. But I mean, people can always, argue this. We as human beings like to put things in neat little categories. Mother Nature likes a little more chaos. So I put it in the starch category, but it does absolutely contribute some protein too.
Great. Thanks, Molly, for the question. Taryn, next question. If veggies, for example, come back home in bento box, is it okay that it needs to be finished before other foods are offered for an after-school snack?
So what I would do is offer the veggies as well as the other foods. Again, kind of getting back to that division of responsibility, we don't want to make kids eat one food in order to earn another food. But yeah, absolutely. Serve those veggies, have that come out and if the veggies alone probably aren't going to be enough for a snack in and of themselves with leftover, then contribute something else too. And maybe that something else you're contributing might be a bit of a less favorite food than the veggie. So we're kind of stacking the odds that the veggie will be chosen then.
Right. Great. Thanks, Taryn, for the question. Next one from Gina. Do you have any tips for changing the contents of lunch to the balance you're suggesting when a younger child has been used to choosing less balanced lunches?
Yeah, I would start moving in that direction. So The first step I would take is doing that list of writing out the foods in each food group that that kiddo does like. Either their familiar foods, so the ones you can pretty solidly bet they'll eat, or the kind of hit and miss foods, and just start contributing those in there and start moving in the direction. So it might not be something that you do like tomorrow, but moving them in that way. And particularly when they're seeing other foods that they do like, they can be more accepting of that shift.
Great. Okay, and then a few in the chat here. So do you have an opinion about arsenic in processed rice products such as rice crackers?
Yeah, so there is some it can be that through the growing of rice that some of the groundwater that the rice is grown in can be contaminated with arsenic, and there can be some then arsenic taken up into the rice. And so then when we're eating that rice, there may be some arsenic present. It's really about the quantity of rice that one is eating. So what I serve, particularly the youngest kiddos, with the smallest bodies, rice products all day, every day, that's a possibility for some accumulation. But I'm not concerned about rice like kind of overarching, having rice in a wide mix of foods. I'm not concerned. And if you do some Googling, there are some ways to prepare rice where you do some soaking of it and that can take some of the arsenic, lower the arsenic levels, or cooking it more like a pasta, like in a lot of boiling water versus often the way we cook rice, and that can lessen the arsenic in there. But again, when we're eating a wide variety, having some rice crackers or, something like that, once in a while in a mix of a wide variety of foods, I'm not concerned.
Good. And Carolyn also asked, could we have the recipe for the black bean brownies?
I have that in the resource list. Yes, a link to the recipe on my website. And yeah, if you Google black bean brownie, there are a lot of dietitians who have a lot of great recipes for black bean brownies. Yeah. So yeah, Google will be good. But yes, the pack Heather is going to be sharing resource list for folks. I have some notes as well as a whole page and a half of recipes, both from my website as well as other great websites for recipes. And one of those happens to be the chickpea quesadilla with the black bean brownie.
Great. Looking forward to trying those.
Mm-hmm.
Next question from Roisin. We have followed Ellen Satter's recommendations for years, and as such, we have thrown out so much food that our daughters don't choose to eat. Any suggestions on preventing waste?
And so, yeah, it's really not like an either or. Thrown out so much food. Yeah, I'm not a fan of food waste either. What I would do is prepare smaller quantities, particularly when there are foods that are more challenging for the little ones. Kind of with that expectation that, yeah, they'll probably not eat this. I mean, you can kind of know going in often, like if something's going to be a challenging food, we're not forcing them to eat it, then, you kind of don't prepare full portions I don't prepare full portions of those foods that are going to be new, or foods that, I've served a gazillion times and the kiddos, still don't eat. And then every once in a while they trip you up and they suddenly eat them, and it's like they've always eaten it, and you're like, oh, I don't have enough. Here, have some of mine. And we gladly give from our plate because we're just so excited they're suddenly eating, whatever it is. So yeah, I'm a big fan of leftovers, have some leftovers, but also I wouldn't be cooking, say there's 2 kids and 2 adults in the home. I wouldn't necessarily be cooking like 4 adult-sized servings if good chance 2 kiddos aren't going to be eating it. So really, I would just be preparing less. And hey, lo and behold, sometimes they might, decide to eat it and eat lots. And just because you're following the Souders division of responsibility doesn't mean if you run out of that food, you can't get something else for them to eat. But it's those other things to eat are only offered when if you happen to run out of the foods that you had planned on the menu.
On that, would you, if you have like a one pot dinner, would you ask the child how much they want to put on their plate or their bowl, as opposed, because I guess I typically just serve it out and then put it in front of them.
Yeah, so I would just do a very small serving in front of them.
So you wouldn't ask necessarily how much do you want at the start?
Yeah. So two options. One is to serve things family style. So they're in the middle, like, you know, you put that, I don't know, the stew, let's say you've done like a chickpea stew, and you made that on the stove, and then you put that, you know, like on a hot plate in the table, and, you know, let people serve themselves with some help there. Everybody serves themselves, kiddos with some help. So they can serve themselves, you know, however much they want. Particularly if it's new, then it might be a smaller amount, or you can even help guide them with that and be like, oh, how about you put a little bit in your bowl at first to see if you like it, and then you can have more if you want more. And if that, you know, doesn't work for you to have it at the table, then I would serve it from, you know, the kitchen, but serve very small portions. And hey, if they like it and they empty that, then just get some seconds or thirds or fourths. Similar to the packed lunch idea, serving a smaller amount of things can be less intimidating for a child, and then they can be more likely to try it. Then, you know, and I'm a big fan of even like serving new things or sauces or that in ramekins on the side, so they can try it as a dip. You know, if you are making it as a pasta sauce or a stir fry sauce, or, you know, whatever you're having, I would put a little bit of sauce maybe on the side in a little ramekin, a little dish, and maybe serve it without the sauce, because the kids might like it without the sauce.
Good suggestions, thanks. Roisin had another question. What can you recommend for treats? When and how much freedom with this? My daughter loves to bake.
Yeah, so the thing with treats is that you do want to have treats sometimes. What we see is that, you know, the reality is our world does have treats in it. And so letting kids enjoy treats sometimes helps them learn to regulate it, where if it's like never, ever a treat is allowed, then when they're outside of your control, then they often have a harder time managing them. And so having treats, and so what I recommend is you choose how often treats are on the menu. And so when treats are on the menu, kids can have the treats. If treats aren't on the menu at that particular meal or snack, they're not on the menu. Just like you're not getting up and making, you know, noodles and cheese if you guys are having chicken stir fry tonight. They, you know, if cookies or, you know, aren't on the menu today, then cookies aren't on the menu at this dinner. And so really what we're wanting, you know, recommending is having kind of, you know, more of that kind of 80-20 type of rule, you know, where the majority of what kids are having is healthy foods, and then, you know, 20% being more of the treat foods. Again, and that's not like, that's more Pareto's principle of 80-20 versus like you having to calculate exactly what is 20%. So yeah, I'm not opposed to kids having some treats every day, but we don't want necessarily nothing but treats all day long. And also how many foods with more hidden sugar you're having would determine then how many outright like cookies and muffins and cupcakes and things you're having as well, right? So if there is more sugary cereal or sugary yogurt, or, you know, granola bars with a lot of sweetener in them, then there's a little less room for the cookies and the cupcakes in that. Where if, you know, it's plain yogurt and, you know, not a lot of hidden sugar things, and you're making your own oatmeal with no added sugar and stuff, then there's more room for that right treat. So it's not like I don't have an absolute rule there.
Great. Next question from Betty. Should kids make their own food list?
I would say it depends on the age, right? Asking a 3-year-old to do their own food list would not be super helpful. Right? But a 14-year-old sure could. And in between would really depend on the age of the kids. Thinking of the kids in my household who happen to be right now 10, 9, and 7, and we had 2 December birthdays. That's why I have to think about that for a moment. The 10-year-old and the 9-year-old certainly could. The 7-year-old he could participate in it, but as a pretty minor participant. But he could participate in the brainstorming. But there are lots of 7-year-olds who could absolutely do a lot more, participating in it. So I base it on each child, but yeah, and I would say, even the 10-year-olds and that would need like an adult like doing it together versus like, oh, you come up with all the ideas, 10-year-olds. But that's not to say that there are some 10-year-olds who love like the cooking shows and the baking shows and they're super into it, right? And so they might do great being like, a little bit supervised, but then, run with it themselves. But I would definitely want to have adults at least partly involved, because you're the one who needs to do the grocery shopping and making sure things fit in, the family budgets and stuff like that, right? So, we don't want the kiddos saying like, oh, I'm going to have nothing but, real crab sushi and caviar and, I don't know, like all these super expensive things that you're like, maybe not. So, it depends on the kid, but yeah, absolutely. Having them participate, I think, is a great idea.
Thanks. We have another question about the food wastage, similar to the other one, about they've been practicing the division of responsibility and feel that they compost a lot of food. So I think we've touched on that one already.
Yeah, and I would do the smaller servings because, yeah, it does not mean that you're composting or doing a lot of food waste. So I think there's something in the understanding that's a little been miscommunicated for you there.
Yeah, so even in the lunch, when you're packing the lunch portions, you would pack less, and then if they eat more, then said they were hungry that day when they got home, then you would know to pack something a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're noticing that a lot of the food's coming back and it's not even being eaten by afternoon snack, then pack less. Yeah.
Okay. Question about serving meals at home. This is similar to my question before, but should kids be allowed to choose what goes onto their plate? Should parents insist that all the foods go on the plate, but still give kids the choice of whether or not they eat it?
Yeah, I would say as often as possible, having foods more family style where the kids serve themselves with help is fantastic, and being able to incorporate that. But I recognize, not every dish, not every night, at every meal lends itself as easy to that, right? So I might do a mix. I think a mix is great. Or even at a meal, maybe a portion of it is plated and a portion of it goes on their plate. And as far as whether they have to put something on their plate or not, it really depends on the kiddo, and if there's been a requirement that what's on your plate you have to try and you have to eat. So the kind of one bite rule works with some kids. I'm not going to deny that. Obviously I've worked with kiddos who are picky eaters for like a dozen years. They're a self-selected group who come to find me, and so they're the kids who like the one bite rule does not work for. And so for those kids, if there's been pressure for them to have to eat what's on their plate or at least try it, then forcing them to put something on their plate can really send them into meltdown mode and shutdown mode. And so then absolutely not. But if it's been quite a neutral experience, or if you have a kid who's, pretty easy, like this eating thing is pretty easy for, then yeah, it can be nice to talk about like, oh, it's polite to, take at least one small piece. So it would depend child to child and what the food environment and the rules around food at home have been previous.
Okay. Great. I think that's all the questions we have in the Q&A. And anybody else have anything in the that they would like to ask Kristen before we close things out?
Yeah, and we have a few more extra minutes here, so, and we've kind of wandered away from the packed lunch thing, and I'm totally okay with that if you have a question that's in the broader realm of feeding kids. It is hard to put like hard boundaries on the topic.
Yeah, I don't see any coming through right now. Answered everything.
Wonderful. Great. I love that we've satiated everybody's question.
Yeah, I think that's, just make sure I got everybody here. Oh, what are your recommendations for kids who have and participate in vigorous activities? More protein? Is that?
I mean, they're going to need, so I can answer it kind of in a general type of way. Again, tricky to know. We're kind of starting to move into individualized advice, and without me being able to do like a full assessment of the child, tough for me to say directly, but they're going to need more food kind of overall. I wouldn't say that they're going to need any difference in the balance. I wouldn't say they need more protein or less protein. Again, if we're talking, a 14-year-old who's, going to like, entering in their first year of hockey, high school camp, and they're really doing it like, what I mean? There's going to be exceptions, but kind of the general kids who are doing vigorous activities, they kind of need more food overall, and their appetite again is going to dictate how much food. And it's going to be a similar proportion of the protein-rich foods, at least 3 times a day. Most likely their activities are probably going to be pretty cardio and expending a lot of energy, so then they need more of the carbs as well. And our athletes need the veggies and fruits just as much as we do in that similar proportion. So I wouldn't say it's going to change the proportions or the balance much. They're just going to need more food overall because they're spending more energy, so they need more fuel.
Sounds good. Okay, anybody, we've got a few people left on in the participant list here. If anybody has any last minute questions, if not, Kristen's provided her contact info. And as we mentioned at the start, we have recorded the presentation. We can distribute that and it'll be available on our website and on the Facebook page. And we'll also send it out in the newsletter. So lots of different ways to find it. And you can always email us too if you didn't get it and need a copy. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you again, Kristen, for all this very helpful information and making yourself available this evening. And yeah, Tarek, any last minute words too?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I got a full page of notes here. And I'm going to use my cookie cutters on the fruit. Never thought about that.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much, Kristen.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for creating this opportunity to share this information and support all of these parents and helping their kiddos become their best eaters.
Great. Thanks so much. And thanks to everybody for joining tonight. And we'll hopefully see you at the PAC meeting at the end of the month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for facilitating, Heather.